This is about building SQL commands from string variables to run using Execute SQL Task. This allows the whole SQL command to vary according to requirements, so keywords, table names, parameters, predicates, whatever needs varying can vary. In other words, not just parameters and predicates, this can be done with parameter mapping. Let's see what we have in mind. I'll just bring a Management Studio across. So for this example, with just a simple select, we're going to select some column name from some table where person ID equals some number value. So the column name might be contracted weekly hours, or it might be surname. The table name might be employment contract, or it might be person. And we can vary the person ID as well if we want to. So those two simple examples, we'll just run this, and we might get contracted weekly hours of 35 for the first select, or we might get a surname of Yang from the second select. And which command we want to run, we're going to control by building a string. So let's see how we do that. I'll just put this out of the way and get back to our Visual Studio. Okay, I've already created some variables, and here they are. So vSQL command, that's the SQL command we're going to build. This is the column name we're interested in. Contracted weekly hours it's set to at the moment. And this is the table name we're interested in. Employment contract. So this is the first select example we've just looked at. I'll just close the variables and look at what we do next. Right, we need to build that value ready for the SQL command. So we can do that using Expression Task. I should say Expression Task became available with SQL Server 2012. Earlier versions you'd have to use script tasks to build expressions for variables. So let's open this and get building. So we need to drag this down, the SQL command equals, and then quote select. I can press the right buttons, and then space quote plus. So we're appending the column name. Drag that down, plus quote space from space quote. You have to keep on remembering to put spaces in to prevent the text joining up and causing syntax errors. Plus the table name, plus and space where hard-coded so the person ID, the column name, equals, and then we're going to add in the number variable, but because it's a number we're going to have to cast it to a string because this whole thing has to be a string. Typecasts. This one will do nicely. So this is going to cast it to what I think of as a wide string, meaning a Unicode. 10 will cover it, it's only a small digit, small integer. And then we can add in the, variable vPersonID. So having done all that, we need to evaluate it to make sure it comes up with something sensible. So that's what it looks like at the moment. Select. There's contracted weekly hours from the column name, from, and then there's the table variable from the table name, and then where person ID equals 3. And this casts that variable to be a string of 3. So that's it. We've got our nicely built vSQL command already. We can OK that. We can join our expression task up to our execute SQL task, and get on with the next step. And that's configuring execute SQL task. So we are going to return a result set, just one row, so single row for result set. In this example we can just stay with OLADB and use our handy connection manager. Right, okay, SQL source type. This time it's going to be a variable. That's where the SQL is going to come from, our variable called vSQL command. So we'll put that in the source variable field and find it. There it is. That's fine. So source type, generally you'd have a direct input maybe. This time it's going to be a variable, and we have to name the variable as vSQL command. This is the string we've loaded from our expression. Okay, no parameters in this case because we're doing it all with a string. Result set. Okay, we want one of those. Result name 0, and the variable we're going to land the result set in is just the value. So that's it, I think. Finished here. We can OK this. Now the exciting bit to see if it works. Let's put a breakpoint into our execute SQL task on post execute event, which will give us a chance to have a look at the value we're loading from the result set. So OK that, and give it a run, and it's caught on the breakpoint. And then what we want to do, we've got the watch has come up, but there's no watch variables in it. Easiest way is bring up the variables and land, drag the value into the watch and land that in. And it has a value of 35, which is good because that's what we saw when we were looking at Management Studio earlier. So that test seems to have worked. Just stop the debugging. And there you go. The whole point of this is that it'll run different SQL according to the values held in the variables. So let's change the values held in the variables. Instead of asking for column contracted weekly hours, let's ask the column surname in another table, hr.person, and see how that goes. So let's close the variables window and give it another run. And this time, yeah, we've got a surname, Jan. So that's good. It's changed column, it's changed table, come up with a different value. Just shut this down, stop the debugging, and that looks good. I like to keep these demos as short as possible. So what we've done here is a fairly straightforward example. Let's just get rid of this and just chuck something together which might be a more realistic application of this sort of work. We might have an Excel spreadsheet, a bit like this, which is a column of tables and a column of commands to perform against each table. We might need to read this in at the beginning of a package to clear tables out ready for data being loaded later. Put that to one side. So that might look like this inside a package. You might have an execute SQL task to read from the spreadsheet into an object variable. And then you'd need a for each loop container which would read that object variable and separate the values into variables for each column in the result set. And then inside the for each loop container you might have an expression task to build a SQL command and then a execute SQL task to execute it. So it might end up looking a bit like this. Execute SQL task to get the rows from the spreadsheet, load it into an object variable, for each loop container to go through the object variable and load each row into separate variables of the column values, an expression task to build those column values into a SQL command, and an execute SQL task to execute it. So that's the sort of stuff you might do. Okay, well, thanks for watching and see you next time.